Hey, I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of Luminar Neo. It's a photo editing software that you can use with Lightroom and Photoshop, and it's actually very popular for its AI features, and I'm going to go through all of those. Thank you Luminar Neo for sponsoring this video. Let's get straight into it. So after you download this software using the link in the description, you can either open up the Luminar Neo software, or you can go into Lightroom and you can actually just like right click, go to edit in. You can also do a very similar thing in Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and edit one of these sample photos. So you can see once you select on any of them, they have the metadata. So what camera was taken on, the ISO, the focal length, all that sort of stuff. You can also hover over and favorite any photo you have. So you can treat this sort of section as a photo organizer. So this is the catalog section. And then of course you can sort by capture time, as well as favorites, rejected, unmarked, and edited. So I'm going to select on this image here and I'm going to go over to presets. So you can ahead of time just select a preset and then go into edit, or you can just go into edit. They do have a lot of different packs that you can purchase in addition to these. Let's go over to Blockbuster and then just select a random one, and then it'll just apply. So these are really nice presets that you can just choose from. If we go over to edit, this is where all the functionality is. And so there's some really nice features that Luminar Neo has over other photo editors. One is the fact that you can apply layers on top of your image. Most photo editors are just basic adjustments or filters. So this eliminates the need for something like Photoshop, because you can load up your own overlay, like a dust overlay or something like that. And you can organize these layers however you want. You can add light leaks, you can add light flares. And so typically people use Lightroom and Photoshop together because of the fact that you can't really add overlays in Lightroom, but here you can do everything in one application, which is super nice. And of course, once you apply like a overlay, you can also select on the layer and you can change the opacity if you want. You can change the blend mode. You can also have it fit. So for example, if it's like smaller like this, you can have it fill or fit or stretch. Another thing you can do is check the history of edits. So just go over to edits. These settings are basically what the preset I chose were, but you can of course change it. So you can show the before and after. You can adjust it more. So if you do make changes, you can go back and change them. You can also just discard the edits as well. Now we have some of the very basic features like crop. So here you can select the aspect ratio. So like 2:3, 1:1, and you can do things such as rotate the image. You can flip the image, and they also have this really nice horizontal alignment. So if you want to straighten a photo, it's actually pretty simple. So let's say I have an image like this where it's not straightened. I can just click on this and then it'll straighten it. They also have composition AI, and they have a lot of AI features, which will basically determine the best settings for whatever given feature. So in this case, it'll find the best composition for a photo. Enhance AI basically is a whole sort of blanket filter on top of your image. So it'll do things such as boost contrast, saturation, brightness, and it'll enhance certain parts of your photo using something called mask AI. So similar to how with composition AI, they determine the best part to crop. Using mask AI right here, they determine the best parts to mask. So they'll only enhance certain parts of the photo. And the great thing is if you press mask AI here, it basically lists different things that you can mask, and it'll actually list it out in text form. So you can mask out certain parts if you want. So here it just listed out some parts of the photo. Some of the words may be a little bit off because of AI, but you can see they have some of the stuff really on point, like architecture, sky, human, man-made ground. So I'm assuming that's the street. So in this case, if we click flora, I think it's tree. You'll see it masked. Now it's red. So you can have it so it only enhances parts that you select. And then next is essentials, which are some very basic just features that you can use. So they have exposure here, smart contrast. So similar to enhance AI, it will determine the right parts to increase contrast in, not just the entire image with the same contrast level. It'll find certain parts of the image to apply more contrast to or less. It has highlights. So highlights are like the brighter areas in your photo. Shadows are the darker areas. And then blacks and whites are self-explanatory. They have curves. So you can do the same things you do up here, but with a curve. So for example, if you want to increase the shadows, you can lift this up. If you want to decrease the highlights, you can lift this down. Curves are a little bit more complex. This is a subject of its own, but they also have color curves, so you can adjust like red shadows, for example. But the quick breakdown is that this bottom left section is sort of the darker areas, the blacks, the shadows. So anything you move here will basically be affected in those areas. This is the midtones in the middle here. So anything that's sort of grayish, not black, but not white. And then this top section here are the white areas. So you'll notice that the reflections here, the buildings are being adjusted if I move this point around. Next, we have color. So these are of course basic features that you get in any photo editor. So you can change the temperature, the tint, saturation, and vibrance. You can also change sharpness, noise reduction. If you're working with skin tones or if you just shot in very bad lighting, you can change the noise reduction. Next is erase. So this allows you to erase specific parts of a photo that you don't want in it. So here, if I wanted to erase like these dotted lines, I can just hover over it. Just click and drag my mouse and then press erase. You can also remove other objects such as power lines and dust. Next is structure AI. So very similar to enhance AI, it'll determine what parts of the photo need more structure. So this is like more clarity. So you can see as I increase it, there's more detail in everything. And if I go the other way, it basically removes all sort of structure and detail from the photo. Next, we have black and white. So we can just convert an image to black and white if we want. And then we can change parts of the photo and target specific colors before it was black and white. So for example, you can see that there's cabs in the background. So if we were to convert to black and white and just adjust red, we can increase the luminance or how bright it is. And then you can do the same thing with saturation. So in this case, everything's set at 0 because it's black and white, but we can increase it. And now suddenly it brings back that color. Next are details. So you can target specific parts of the photo. Larger details would be like the car, but smaller details would be like parts of the leaves in the tree. And so you can target where you want most of the sharpening to occur. So I'm actually going to go back to this image right here and we're going to edit it because it's a little bit more applicable to this. So now that we have this image, we can also just go to Sky AI and just adjust the sky. So you can see here, I just swapped the sky seamlessly. You can also get more skies. They have different ones. Not only does it adjust the sky, it also adjusts the colors of the entire photo. Like for example, if we click on this purple one, everything gets darker, everything becomes purple. So they automatically relight it for you as well. And it's actually the best experience I've had with sky replacement, even better than Photoshop's one. Let's go back to landscape. And so here you can dehaze, which will basically remove any haze from the photo. So here you can see it becomes much more contrasty, much more punchy. And so it really sort of flattens the image. You can also change it so that it looks more like golden hour. So it introduces some orange. So a foliage enhancer would target trees and grass. So in this case, if we increase it, all the trees get a little bit more punchy and saturated. Now I'm going to switch into a portrait photo because some of the other features are sort of geared towards portrait photos. So of course you can also add a vignette here. You can choose the subject and then you can vignette around it. There's also something called relight, which is actually a very amazing feature. It basically can adjust the lighting of objects closer to the foreground and objects in the background. So in this case, if we increase the brightness near, any object that's in the front will get brighter. So here you can see as I increase this, only her face gets brighter. Nothing in the background gets brighter. But if we were to do the opposite and change the brightness far, you can see we can adjust just the background. So this is really good if you shot in some weird lighting situation. Next is atmosphere AI. So this can introduce fake fog, fake mist into a background. So if you want to add depth to a photo, you can just increase the amount a little bit. So here you can see this is the before and this is the after. You can see there's some sort of smoke in the background. Using mask AI, they actually determine for relight AI and atmosphere AI what's the subject and what's the background. You also have the option to add fake sun rays. So this is also a really nice feature. So you can press place sun center and just move it. Let's just say you want something coming out from this window here. You can increase the amount and then you can have like a fake light come out. And you can see once again, it doesn't just add an overlay, it actually affects the face. You can see the right side of the face gets a little bit darker while the left side of the face absorbs the sun ray. And then you can also change the look of the sun ray, so you can make it shorter, which looks a little bit more realistic. You can have it a little bit higher in intensity. You can change the radius of it. You can change the number of sun rays, and then you can also change the warmth of it if you want. Next is dramatic. So depending on your photo, you might want to stylize it a certain way. So this sort of desaturates your image, makes it much more detailed and contrasty. So it's actually kind of similar to enhance AI. Next is mood. So this is just like a LUT or a filter you can apply. So we can do like San Diego, for example, and just add on this LUT. So you can see the before and after, like really simple LUT, very simple to use. We also have toning, so it can target the shadows or highlights, and you can basically apply a certain color to it. So let's just say you wanted to create some sort of like disposable camera look. You wanted green shadows. You can go over to shadows, increase the saturation a little bit, and just go to green. And now suddenly you have sort of green shadows. Like very simple. You can also do a similar thing with the color curves, but this might be a little bit easier. You can also go to mystical, which similar to dramatic, it just stylizes your photo in a certain way. So this makes it very glowy, very soft. Next is glow, which does a very similar thing, except you have a little bit more flexibility. You can add different types of glow. And so this also is something I used to do in Photoshop, but now you don't really have to do that. You can just use this one feature, and then you can add grain as well, and you can change the size and roughness. So this is a pretty typical feature. And now are some of the other AI features catered towards portraits. So one is portrait bokeh. So let's just say you shot on a very wide f-stop and you want to make it a little bit more shallow. You can increase the amount, and it'll basically just blur the background a little bit more smaller than it was before. In this case, you can't really tell because the background's already very shallow, but this is similar to Relight in a way because it can detect what the subject is and what the background is. So even if I hover over, you can already see it selected this by itself. Next is Face AI. So similar to Relight AI, you can adjust specific lighting situations. So you can increase the face light. You can also slim the face a little bit. So you can see it does that pretty easily. You can change things such as eyes. You can increase sort of the brightness of the eye. You can change the eye color. Very crazy stuff. And you don't have to do any masking. You don't have to use Photoshop. It's actually quite crazy. There's also a feature for the mouth as well. Next is skin. So this will smoothen out skin pretty easily. Just increase the amount. And you can also remove shining. So sometimes when you shoot in a very bright light, you might have a weird reflection on skin or it just might look weird. So you can remove shining. So you can see here, the right side of her face is a little bit brighter, but let's just say you want to remove that. You can see as I increase it, that light is way less visible. And then next is body AI. Her body's not really in this besides like the top part of her body, so you can't really change this, but it's very similar to skin AI. One of my favorite features is color harmony. It just sort of matches the colors the perfect way. I personally really enjoy this. And there's very basic stuff like color balance, split color warmth, and color contrast. And then they also have dodge and burn, so you can manually lighten up certain parts of the photo. So this is something that is typically in Photoshop that I use. So here you can see you can brighten certain parts of the photo. So after you're done, you can press actions and press save as preset. You can also press on this eye to show the before and after. And then once you're done, you can go over to file, export. You can also go to file, share, and share to your email, messages, or your phone. And you can also open it up in Photoshop, Photos. That's about it for this tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed. Make sure to check the link in the description to download Luminar Neo. Otherwise, make sure to check out this playlist and subscribe for more videos.